Xenos Council banned human tactics. Then discovered we learned from the Astartes. If you are not a heretic, then declare your city of origin. Leave a comment, a like, and subscribe to the Emperor's glory. At the conclusion, rate this tale from 0 to 10. The Emperor protects. The plasma cannon vaporized 3 Saurian shock troopers instantly, their scales turning to ash in the scorching beam. Captain Veltar, of the Feline Confederation, watched the humans advance through the smoking crater that had once been the eastern defensive wall, and felt his tail bristle with something between admiration and pure terror. "By the stars," whispered his communications officer, a young tabby whose ears were flat against her skull. "They're not even taking cover." The humans marched forward in perfect formation, their red power armor gleaming despite the battlefield's chaos. Sisters of Battle, they called themselves. Veltar had read the briefings, but seeing them in action was something else entirely. They chanted as they walked into certain death, their voices rising above the screech of alien weaponry. "Blessed is the mind too small for doubt. Purge the unclean." A Saurian plasma lance punched through the lead sister's shoulder, spinning her around. Veltar expected her to fall to seek medical aid, to at least pause. Instead, she planted her feet, raised her bolter, and emptied an entire clip into the enemy position, while reciting what sounded like religious poetry. "The Emperor protects," she said calmly, ejecting the spent magazine. A medic appeared at her side with combat stims. "Sister Cordelia requires no aid. The wound is blessed." The medic, another human, shrugged and moved on to the next casualty. Veltar's ears twitched. These creatures treated mortal wounds like minor inconveniences. "Commander," his tactical advisor, a lean vulpine named Kess, approached with a data slate. "The human casualties are unusual." "Define unusual," Veltar said, never taking his eyes off the advancing sisters. 70% wounded, 0 retreats. They keep fighting until they physically cannot move. Then they throw grenades. Kess's bushy tail was rigid with stress. "Sir, I've been analyzing their tactical doctrine for 3 days. I don't think they have a retreat protocol." On the field below, a sister's flamer malfunctioned, spewing promethium across her own armor. Instead of falling back, she charged directly into a cluster of Saurian heavy infantry, turning herself into a living incendiary weapon. Her last words echoed across the battlefield. "Burn in holy fire!" Veltar's claws extended involuntarily. "Contact the Xenos Council. Tell them we need to discuss the human problem." "Problem?" Kess tilted his head. "Sir, they're winning. That is the problem." 3 hours later, Veltar found himself in the council chambers aboard the orbital station Harmony's Reach, facing representatives from 12 different species. The avian diplomat, Chirka, ruffled her silver feathers nervously as she reviewed the combat footage. "This cannot be accurate," she trilled, her translator rendering her melodic voice into harsh Gothic. "No species fights with this level of enthusiasm for self-destruction." "The footage is verified," rumbled Tormas, the bovine representative. His massive frame shifted uncomfortably in the reinforced chair. "My own engineers witnessed a human tech priest repair a plasma reactor by praying to it." "Machine spirits," corrected the human observer at the end of the table. Sister Superior Celestine sat motionless in her power armor, helm maglocked to her belt. Her scarred face was serene, but Veltar noticed her hand never strayed far from her bolt pistol. "The Omnissiah speaks through all blessed technology." The chamber fell silent. Having a human present was unprecedented, but after the Saurian hegemony's third failed invasion attempt, the Council had little choice but to acknowledge the Imperium of Man as a significant military power. "Sister Superior," Chirka said carefully, "perhaps you could explain your species' tactical doctrines for the sake of better cooperation." Celestine's pale blue eyes fixed on the avian diplomat. "There is no fear in righteousness. The Emperor's will guides us. We advance because retreat is heresy." "But the casualties," protested Dr. Giltor, speaking through his aquatic translator suit. "Your forces suffer losses that would break any other military." "Death in service to the Emperor is the greatest honor," Celestine replied matter-of-factly. "Every sister who falls is blessed. Every wound is a prayer. Every battle is worship." Veltar watched the other delegates exchange worried glances. He'd served in 3 interstellar conflicts and commanded respect from species across the galaxy. But these humans operated on principles that defied every military doctrine he'd ever studied. "Sister Superior," he said slowly, "what is your homeworld like?" For the first time, something like emotion flickered across Celestine's features. Was it nostalgia? "Terra is the most sacred world in the galaxy," she said. "Every breath is earned through devotion. Every step is taken in faith. But the environmental conditions," pressed Kess from his position near the door. "Our scouts report gravitational variance, atmospheric toxins, predator species that—" "Terror shapes the faithful," Celestine interrupted. "It is not cruel, it is perfect. Only the strong serve the Emperor." Tormas leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Sister, your species evolved on a death world. All worlds are death worlds without faith." The simplicity of her answer sent a chill through Veltar's spine. These humans weren't just warriors. They were products of a planet that had spent millennia trying to kill them, shaped by a culture that turned survival into religious devotion. "The immediate concern," Chirka interjected, "is the Saurian response. Intelligence suggests they're planning something unprecedented." The main display activated, showing star charts of the Kepler sector. Red markers indicated Saurian fleet movements, converging on a single point, Haven Prime, the joint colony world where 50 million civilians from a dozen species lived in harmony. "They're abandoning their fortress worlds," Dr. Giltor observed, "committing everything to a single assault. Because they know something we're just beginning to understand," Veltar said grimly. "Humans don't just fight wars, they win them. The Saurians are making their last stand before humanity spreads further into the galaxy." Celestine stood, her power armor servos humming softly. "Haven Prime will not fall. The Imperium does not abandon the innocent." "Sister," Chirka said carefully, "our combined fleets number less than 200 ships. Intelligence reports indicate the Saurian Armada will field over 800 vessels, including their super dreadnoughts. Numbers are irrelevant. The Emperor protects. But tactically, there is no tactic but faith, no strategy but devotion." Celestine's hand moved to her bolt pistol. "You speak of odds as if the Emperor's will can be measured in mathematics." Veltar felt his fur stand on end. He'd seen humans fight, seen them die singing hymns and charging through plasma fire. But this was different. This wasn't just fanaticism. This was absolute certainty that defied rational thought. "What reinforcements can the Imperium provide?" he asked. "The Third Redemption Fleet is already en route. 12 battle barges, 30 escort vessels, and 3 companies of Adeptus Astartes." The chamber erupted in surprised chittering and growls. Veltar had heard rumors about the Space Marines, but assumed they were propaganda. Giants in powered armor who knew no fear, created from the Emperor's own genetic template. "How many Marines total?" Kess asked, his voice barely a whisper. 300 battle brothers." 300, Dr. Giltor repeated slowly. "Against 800 ships." Celestine's smile was razor-sharp. "You misunderstand. The Astartes are not going to fight 800 ships." She moved toward the chamber's exit, her heavy footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. "They're going to destroy them. All." As the blast doors sealed behind her, Veltar stared at the tactical display. 800 Saurian warships, crewed by the most ruthless species in known space, armed with weapons that could crack planets. Against them, 300 human super soldiers, who apparently viewed impossible odds as mere obstacles to overcome through faith. "Sir," Kess whispered, moving closer to his commander, "what do we do?" Veltar's tail lashed once, twice. In his decades of military service, he'd learned to read the patterns of war, to predict outcomes based on logic and experience. But the humans operated outside those patterns, achieved victories that shouldn't have been possible. "We watch," he said finally, "and we learn what happens when an unstoppable force meets an unmovable faith." The display updated with new data. Saurian vanguard forces had reached the system's edge. Haven Prime had less than 72 hours before the shooting started. Somewhere between the stars, 300 Space Marines were preparing for what every tactical computer in the galaxy calculated as certain death. Veltar couldn't shake the feeling that the computers were about to be proven very, very wrong. The Valdoran ambassador's tail twitched nervously as he read the human proposal for the third time. Around the circular council chamber, representatives of a dozen species shifted uncomfortably in their specialized seating arrangements. "They want to do what exactly?" chirped Kethva, her avian features ruffling with distress. The Etherian diplomat had served on the Outer Rim Coalition Council for over 40 standard years, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. Ambassador Marcus Chen of the Imperial Guard stood ramrod straight in his dress uniform, the aquila gleaming on his chest. Behind him, two Sisters of Battle flanked the entrance like living statues, their power armor humming quietly. The humans had arrived 3 weeks ago, refugees, fleeing some catastrophe in their home system. Now they were proposing the unthinkable. "The situation is quite simple," Chen began, his voice carrying the clipped authority that had made him a colonel before his diplomatic assignment. "The Kithara swarm has overrun 12 systems in 6 months. Your conventional tactics have failed repeatedly. We offer an alternative solution." The Tau representative, Por-El Mayen, activated his holographic display. Casualty reports from the latest engagement scrolled past in blue light. "The mathematics are disturbing. Our Firecast estimates another 3 months before complete system collapse, but your proposed methodology appears to violate 17 treaties regarding acceptable warfare conduct." Sister Superior Magdalena spoke for the first time, her voice filtering through her helmet's vox grill with mechanical authority. "Heretics and Xenos filth deserve no mercy. The Emperor's judgment is absolute." Several ambassadors recoiled visibly. The Valdoran's ears flattened completely against his skull. In their brief time among the Coalition, the humans had already gained a reputation for unsettling pronouncements. Chen shot his companion a warning glance before continuing. "What Sister Magdalena means is that desperate times require decisive action. The Kithara don't negotiate. They don't retreat. They consume everything in their path. You've tried evacuation, defensive lines, even scorched. Earth tactics. Nothing works because you're fighting them like civilized opponents." "And you are not civilized?" asked the Eldari delegate, Farseer Aletaros. His ancient eyes held millennia of accumulated disdain as he studied the humans. "Your species broadcasts pain and crude emotions across the psychic spectrum like a diseased beacon. Your technology resembles religious ritual more than scientific method." "That's exactly my point," Chen replied calmly. "You see our methods as primitive barbarism. The Kithara see them as incomprehensible threat patterns that don't fit their evolutionary programming." The holographic display shifted to show tactical footage from the humans' last engagement. Coalition forces had been retreating from Hive Fleet Tendril Nemesis 7 when a single Imperial Guard regiment had volunteered for rear guard action. What followed defied standard military doctrine on every level. "Explain to me again why your soldiers charged into the bioship landing zones," Por-El Mayen requested, his mechanical translator struggling with concepts like glory and martyrdom that had no Tau equivalents. "Because running away gets you eaten from behind," came a new voice from the chamber's entrance. Commissar Kane strode in, his peaked cap at a precise angle and his chainsword gleaming at his hip. The political officer's arrival caused another ripple of unease among the alien delegates. "Ah, Commissar," Chen nodded. "Perfect. Timing. Perhaps you could enlighten our colleagues about Imperial doctrine regarding retreat." Kane's smile was predatory. "Retreat is cowardice. Cowardice is heresy. The penalty for heresy is death. Therefore, advance and attack." He turned toward the assembled Xenos with theatrical grandeur. "The Emperor protects the righteous and damns the weak. We do not retreat because there is nowhere to retreat to." The Valdoran ambassador's voice cracked slightly as he spoke. But the casualty projections from your strategy show 93% fatality rates for the initial assault waves. Acceptable losses, Magdalena stated flatly. Acceptable? Kethva's voice rose to a shriek that rattled the chamber's acoustics. You would sacrifice millions of sentient beings. To save billions more, Chen interjected smoothly. Every world the Kithara consume feeds their next assault. Every civilian they devour becomes biomass for more warrior organisms. Your casualty projections assume the current defensive strategy might work. It won't. We've seen this pattern before. The hologram shifted again, showing archival footage from some distant Imperial campaign. Massive hive ships descending on industrial worlds, stripping them bare in days. Cities consumed by living carpets of chittering horrors. But then came other images. Space Marine drop pods smashing through bioship hulls. Sisters of battle advancing through walls of fire while chanting. Hymns, Imperial Guard fixing bayonets for impossible charges. The Emperor grants strength to the faithful, Magdalena added. What you call suicide, we call opportunity. Farcea Alaitaros leaned forward with ancient grace. Your faith is admirable in its intensity, but faith does not stop bioacid or rending claws. Your soldiers are merely human, not demigods. Kane laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Merely human. Friend Xenos, you understand nothing about humanity. We didn't claw our way to the stars by being reasonable. We got here by being too stupid to quit and too stubborn to die. The Commissar activated his own data slate, showing recruitment statistics from dozens of Imperial worlds. Cadia fell after 10,000 years of siege warfare, and its people kept fighting in the rubble until the planet cracked in half. Armageddon burns for centuries, and factory workers still report for their shifts, while orcs shell the hab blocks. Every Imperial world is a fortress. Every citizen is a potential soldier. Every death is a sacrament. This is madness, whispered the aquatic Hadeshi representative, her translated voice bubbling with distress. How does your species function with such aggressive instincts? Very well, actually, Chen replied. The Imperium has endured for 10 millennia. How long has the Coalition existed? Uncomfortable silence settled over the chamber. The Coalition was barely 2 centuries old and already showing cracks under pressure from external threats. Por-El Mien's mechanical voice broke the quiet. Your psychological profiles indicate unusual bonding behaviors. You form immediate attachment to individuals outside your genetic groups. This explains your willingness to die for our species, but also suggests exploitable emotional vulnerabilities. Sister Magdalena turned her helmeted head toward the Tau delegate with mechanical precision. We do not die for your species, Xenos. We die for the Emperor's will. If his will includes your survival, then we shall ensure it. If not, she left the threat hanging. The chamber's environmental systems hummed nervously as alien ambassadors processed this declaration. Several began quiet consultations with their respective homeworlds via encrypted channels. Perhaps, suggested Keth Var carefully, we could implement a modified version of your tactical doctrine, something less extensive in scope. Kane shook his head firmly. Half measures are worse than doing nothing. The Kethera adapt to everything you throw at them. The only way to win is to be so completely insane that they can't process your behavior patterns quickly enough to counter them. Define insane, requested the Valdoran ambassador, though his expression suggested he already regretted asking. Ramming bioships with transport vessels packed with explosives while broadcasting hymns over all communication frequencies, Chen replied, matter-of-factly. Ordering artillery strikes on your own positions if the enemy gets too close, advancing when tactical doctrine demands retreat, fighting when logic demands surrender. And this works? Por-El Mien asked, genuine curiosity overtaking diplomatic caution. The Imperium stands, Magdalena stated simply. 10,000 years of enemies have tried to destroy humanity. We remain. They do not. Farcea Alaitaros stirred uneasily. His psychic senses detected something troubling about the humans' presence. Their minds burned with conviction that bordered on fanaticism, but underneath lay something older and more dangerous. These weren't primitives stumbling through the galaxy by accident. They were predators who had survived in a universe that wanted them dead through sheer bloody-minded refusal to accept defeat. The tactical merits aside, he said carefully, your methods would require extensive coordination between Coalition and Imperial forces. Cultural integration presents challenges. Nothing we can't handle, Chen assured him. Imperial doctrine is surprisingly flexible regarding alien auxiliaries, provided they demonstrate proper dedication to the cause. And what cause is that exactly? Asked the Hadeshi delegate. Kane's grin widened. Survival, victory, the absolute annihilation of anything that threatens humanity or its allies. His hand rested casually on his chainsword's grip. The Emperor protects those who serve his will. The question is whether you want protection or conquest. The assembled ambassadors exchanged meaningful glances. Outside the council chamber, automated defense platforms were already reconfiguring themselves according to Imperial specifications. Human engineering teams had been disturbingly efficient in adapting coalition technology to their requirements. More disturbing still were the reports coming in from other refugee settlements. Wherever Imperial forces had established bases, local crime rates dropped to zero. Productivity increased. Military recruitment soared among planetary defense forces. The humans seemed to inspire either fanatical loyalty or absolute terror with very little middle ground. "We need guarantees," Por Elmien stated finally. "Assurances that Imperial forces will withdraw peacefully once the Kithara threat is neutralized." The three humans exchanged glances that spoke volumes about their opinion of such naive concerns. "The galaxy is never peaceful," Chen replied quietly. "When the Kithara are gone, something else will take their place. There's always another war, another enemy, another crisis that demands decisive action. The question isn't whether we'll withdraw. The question is whether you'll be strong enough to stand with us when the next threat arrives." Thunder echoed distantly through the station's hull as the first wave of Kithara scout organisms arrived at the system's edge, 3 days ahead. Of schedule, the Zephyrian tactical display painted a grim picture. Enemy biosignatures flooded their sensors like a crimson tide of death. The Hive fleet had deployed its latest adaptation, acid-spitting gargoyles that dissolved their defensive shields on contact, while ground-based Carnifex variants literally ate through their fortified positions. "Tactical assessment complete," announced War Leader Kyrath, his leonine features grim. "They've learned from our previous engagement. Patterns, standard defensive protocols are ineffective." Captain Thorne studied the holographic battlefield with those unnervingly calm human eyes. "Good. I was getting bored with standard protocols anyway." Admiral Velasque's feathers ruffled in agitation. "Bored? Captain, we're facing extinction. Their numbers have doubled since yesterday's assault. Our ammunition reserves are at 12%. Morale among the civilian population is irrelevant," interrupted Commissar Vex, emerging from the shadows like some harbinger of doom. "The Emperor's will shall be done, regardless of Xenos morale considerations." The temperature in the command chamber seemed to drop several degrees. Even after 3 weeks of alliance, the alien commanders still flinched when the black-coated human spoke. His bionic eye whirred as it focused on the tactical display, processing threat assessments with cold efficiency. "The situation has changed," Captain Thorne continued, completely unbothered by his subordinate's intimidating presence. "Intelligence reports indicate the hive mind is adapting faster than anticipated. It's learning our combined tactics." "Learning how?" demanded General Brutus, the massive Ursine commander slamming a claw-tipped paw on the strategy table. "We've maintained communication security protocols." Sister Superior Cassia stepped forward, her power armor's servo motors humming softly. When she spoke, her voice carried the absolute certainty of the faithful. "The Tyranids consume genetic memory, General. Every fallen defender feeds their collective knowledge. They've tasted our tactics through the flesh of our dead." The alien commanders exchanged horrified glances. The concept of learning through cannibalism was disturbing enough, but the casual way the human warrior nun discussed it was somehow worse. "Then we adapt faster than they do," Captain Thorne declared, with characteristic human stubbornness. "Signal the Crimson Fist strike team. It's time for Operation Martyrdom." "Martyrdom?" War Leader Kyrath's ears flattened against his skull. "Captain, surely you're not suggesting—" "I'm not suggesting anything," Thorne interrupted. "I'm implementing Imperial doctrine. When facing an adaptive enemy, you deny them the opportunity to adapt." Commissar Vex's scarred face twisted into something that might have been a smile. "Scorched earth tactics. Eliminate their learning curve by eliminating their food source." The alien stared in mounting horror as the human's plan became clear. Admiral Velasque's voice came out as a strangled chirp. "You're talking about destroying your own defensive positions, the supply depots, the medical facilities, the civilian evacuation routes." "Affirmative," Sister Cassia replied with serene conviction. "The Emperor protects the faithful. Infrastructure can be rebuilt. Souls corrupted by Xenos consumption cannot be redeemed." "But that's insane," General Brutus roared. "Without those facilities, we have no fallback positions, no supply lines, no medical support for wounded soldiers." Captain Thorne's expression never changed. General, in 38 years of service to the Imperium, I've learned that fallback positions are where courage goes to die. Supply lines are what weak enemies target when they can't face you directly. And medical support, he gestured toward a nearby space marine who was missing his left arm but still stood at perfect attention. Brother Maximus here had his arm torn off by a hive tyrant 12 hours ago. He's requested permission to rejoin the assault. The massive space marine nodded gravely. The pain keeps me focused, Captain. The Emperor's will burns stronger than any wound. War Leader Kyrath's tactical mind struggled to process this information. But without medical treatment, surely he'll die gloriously in service to mankind. Brother Maximus finished. As is proper for one of the Adeptus Astartes. The alien commanders watched in stunned silence as the space marine began checking his bolt pistol with one hand, apparently preparing to enter combat while critically injured. This wasn't bravado or posturing. It was simply how humans operated. Admiral Velasque's voice trembled. Captain, your species continues to confound our understanding of basic survival instincts. That's because you're thinking like prey animals, Commissar Vex observed coldly. Humanity learned long ago that survival isn't about avoiding death. It's about making your death count for something. The tactical display suddenly erupted with new contacts, thousands of them, moving in perfect coordination. The Hive fleet was launching its final assault, throwing every bioform it had created into a massive wave that would either break the defenders or consume them entirely. Contact! Massive enemy movement across all sectors, shouted Tech Sergeant Mordian from the communications array. Estimated enemy strength. Emperor's throne, they're everywhere. Captain Thorne calmly walked to the command chair as alert klaxons wailed throughout the facility. His voice cut through the noise with absolute authority. All Imperial forces, this is Captain Thorne. Operation Martyrdom is now active. Implement Scorched Earth Protocol Omega. Deny the enemy everything. The alien commanders watched their displays light up as human. Positions began systematically destroying their own infrastructure. Supply depots erupted in massive explosions. Medical facilities were stripped of equipment and set ablaze. Communication relays were overloaded until they melted. By the ancient winds, whispered Admiral Velasque. They're eliminating centuries of defensive preparation in minutes. Sister Cassia's amplified voice echoed across all communication channels, leading the human forces in a battle hymn that sent chills down. Alien spines. From the lightning and the tempest, our Emperor deliver us. From plague, temptation, and war, our Emperor deliver us. From the scourge of the Kraken, our Emperor deliver us. The response from thousands of human voices was like thunder. That we shall know no fear. General Brutus stared at his species-allied humans with something approaching awe. They're singing. In the face of certain death, they're singing. Not just singing, War Leader Kyrath corrected, his enhanced hearing picking up the subtle harmonics. They're synchronizing. Every human voice is matching the rhythm. It's creating a unified psychological state across their entire force. Commissar Vex nodded approvingly as he drew his plasma pistol. Faith shared is faith multiplied. Each voice strengthens the whole. The first wave of Tyranids crashed against the outer perimeter like a living tsunami. Hormagaunts screeched as they encountered not prepared defensive positions, but Scorched Earth and Imperial Guard units fighting from the rubble of their own demolished fortifications. Impossible, General Brutus breathed, watching the tactical feeds. They're actually winning, fighting from crater to crater, using debris as cover, and they're still advancing. Captain Thorne's voice remained steady as he coordinated the defense. Squad Tertius, fall back to grid 7-7 Alpha, burn everything as you go. Squad Primus, establish killing field at the ammunition. Depot, detonate on my signal. But Captain, War Leader Kyrath protested, that will destroy our remaining heavy weapons cache. Exactly. Better to deny it to the enemy than let them adapt to our weapons. Thorne's finger hovered over the detonation control. Besides, a true Imperial Guardsman needs only a lasgun, a bayonet, and faith in the Emperor. The explosion lit up the battlefield like a miniature sun. Hundreds of Tyranid bioforms were vaporized instantly, while the shockwave sent thousands more tumbling into carefully prepared crossfires where human forces waited with fixed bayonets. Admiral Velasque's tactical analysis couldn't account for what he was witnessing. Their strategy makes no sense. They're eliminating their own advantages to create short-term tactical gains. No, Sister Cassia corrected, her voice carrying absolute certainty. They're revealing the enemy's greatest weakness, which is, the hive mind expects rational behavior, calculated risks, predictable responses based on self-preservation. Her helmet's Vox grill gave her words an otherworldly quality. But humans aren't rational when fighting for their faith. The second wave of Tyranids adapted to the destroyed terrain, spawning bioforms with specialized appendages for navigating rubble. They advanced more cautiously, having learned from the first wave's devastating losses. That's when Captain Thorne activated the second phase. All Astartes units, initiate close combat protocol, Ultima. Show these Xenos why the Emperor's angels know no fear. Brother Maximus led the charge despite his missing arm, his remaining hand gripping a chainsword that roared to life. Behind him, 8 more Space Marines emerged from concealed positions, turning the battlefield into a whirlwind of ceramite armor and screaming weapon teeth. The Tyranids adapted again, focusing fire on the Space Marines. That's when the third phase began. Sister Superior. Captain Thorne's voice carried just a hint of satisfaction. You may commence Purification Protocol 7. Sister Cassia's response was immediate. With pleasure, Captain. Sisters, for the Emperor's glory. The Sisters of Battle emerged from the smoke like avenging angels, their flamers turning the air into a sea of blessed promethium. Where they walked, nothing survived. Where they sang their hymns of purification, even the very ground was cleansed of Tyranid contamination. War leader Kyrath realized with dawning understanding that the humans hadn't been destroying their positions randomly. They'd been creating a massive killing ground, channeling the enemy into predetermined zones where their most devastating weapons could achieve maximum effect. By the 7 moons, he breathed, it was all planned. The destruction, the apparent chaos, even the tactical retreats. They've been leading the hive mind exactly where they wanted it. Commissar Vex is bionic. I fixed on the alien commander. The enemy can adapt to any tactic they understand, but they cannot adapt to pure, irrational faith backed by superior firepower. The alien forces watched in stunned amazement as the tide of battle shifted. The seemingly unstoppable Tyranid swarm was being systematically destroyed by humans who had apparently thrown away every tactical advantage just to create this moment of perfect annihilation. But then, the displays showed something that made every alien commander's blood freeze. A new biosignature was approaching, massive beyond anything they had encountered. The Hive fleet had deployed its final gambit, a bio-titan so large it would take combined nuclear strikes to damage it, and they had just destroyed all their heavy weapons. The Tyranid bioships descended like a plague upon the stars, their chitinous hulls blotting out entire star systems. Admiral Velkoth of the Tow Empire watched from his command bridge as the Xenos Council's combined fleets prepared for their final stand above the colony world of Primaris Tertius. Every major species had committed their best. Eldar Craftworld Saim Han's lightning-fast jet bikes, Tau crisis suits with their advanced rail technology, even the proud Kroot warrior clans had answered the call. Their numbers are beyond calculation, whispered Farseer Ayana, her wraithbone armor gleaming with psychic energy. The great devourer has learned from every world it consumed. This hive fleet adapts faster than we can counter. Admiral Velkoth nodded grimly. They had fought for 3 standard days, losing ship after ship to the endless swarm. The Bio-Titans were already making planetfall, their acidic breath melting through the colony's shields. In 6 hours, 10 million civilians would be dissolved for biomass. Perhaps, the Farseer continued, it is time to consider evacuation protocols. Negative, came a new voice over the comm channel. Deep, mechanical, utterly without fear. This is Captain Aurelius of the Iron Fist's 3rd Company. We are en route. Velkoth's hooved feet shuffled nervously. Humans. The Council had specifically voted against requesting Imperial assistance. Too unpredictable. Too brutal. The horror stories were legendary. Humans who charged artillery positions while singing hymns, who strapped bombs to themselves for tactical advantages, who somehow made their primitive technology function through religious fervor. With respect, Captain, Velkoth transmitted, our combined forces of 200 vessels have failed to halt this incursion. What can one Imperial strike force accomplish? Laughter echoed through the comm, not cruel, but genuinely amused. Brother Admiral, we are not one strike force. We are the hammer of the Emperor, and we do not ask for permission to purge Xenos. Space itself seemed to convulse as the Imperial fleet translated from the warp. Velkoth's sensors screamed warnings as massive shapes materialized, battle barges the size of small moons, strike cruisers bristling with cathedral spires and weapon batteries, and at their head a vessel that defied logic, a space hulk that had been somehow sanctified and pressed into service, its hull covered in holy icons that actually glowed with their own light. "Emperor, preserve us," whispered Tech Adept Zerion over the vox. "The machine spirits sing with joy. They hunger for righteous war." But it was not just Astartes. Velkoth's enhanced vision caught the distinctive silhouettes of Adepta Sororita's vessels. The Sisters of Battle had come as well, and behind them, like moths drawn to flame, came the endless ranks of the Imperial Guard. Troopships by the thousand, each carrying regiments from different death worlds, all converging on this single point of space with the inexorable certainty of gravity itself. "Greetings, Xenos allies," came a new voice, this one carrying the crisp authority of nobility. "This is Canoness Superior Celestine of the Order of the Sacred Rose. The God Emperor has deemed this world worthy of salvation. We shall provide it." Farseer Iana's psychic senses reeled. The human ships did not just carry soldiers. They carried faith so pure and concentrated that it warped reality around them. She had witnessed the power of human belief before, but never at this scale. The very warp itself seemed to bend and retreat from their presence. "Impossible," she breathed. "Their technology should not function. Half their systems are held together with prayer and ritual oils." "Sister," Captain Aurelius voxed to the Canoness, "what is your assessment?" 57 bioships in high orbit, Brother Captain. Estimated 40 million tyrannid organisms on planetary surface. They have consumed 3/4 of the southern continent. Acceptable odds. Brothers, sisters, guardsmen, we advance. The Emperor protects. What? Followed challenged everything Velkoth understood about warfare. The Imperial Guard ships, those massive troop ships filled with ordinary humans, did not seek cover or maneuver for advantage. They simply accelerated directly toward the Tyrannid fleet, launching drop pods and assault craft in such numbers that they blotted out the stars. "They are committing suicide," Velkoth reported to his fleet. "No species attacks a superior force in such a manner." But the Astartes fleet had already engaged. Their battle barges opened fire not with careful, precise shots, but with everything they possessed. Lance batteries, macro cannons, torpedo tubes, all firing simultaneously while chanting battle hymns that somehow transmitted across the vacuum. "For the Emperor and the Imperium of Man," the cry echoed from 10,000 human throats as Space Marine boarding pods smashed directly into Tyrannid bioships. Not seeking weak points or conducting careful infiltration, they simply rammed their way through chitinous hulls and began slaughtering everything inside. Velkoth watched his tactical display in horror as Tyrannid vessels began exploding one by one. The creatures inside were not being defeated through superior technology or clever tactics. They were being butchered by humans who fought with a ferocity that bordered on religious mania. "Brother Captain," came a Vox transmission from inside one of the bioships, "we have reached the neural cluster, beginning purification protocols." "Acknowledged, Sergeant Grimald. Burn out the brain beast and move to the next target." Velkoth's audio pickups caught the sounds from within, not the clean efficiency of pulse rifles or the graceful deadliness of Eldar shuriken, but the roar of chainswords, the chant of litanies and the wet sounds of close combat. One Space Marine squad was carving through a bioship containing thousands of organisms, and they were winning. "This violates all tactical doctrine," he transmitted to Farseer Iana. "They should have been overwhelmed in minutes." "Their faith burns like a star," she replied, her voice distant with psychic strain. "The warp itself bends around their certainty. They do not fight with hope. They fight with absolute knowledge that they will triumph." On the planet's surface, the situation was no less insane. Sister Superior Miriam led her squad of battle sisters in a charge directly up the slope of a bio-titan. The creature stood 300 meters tall, its acid cannons dissolving Imperial Guard tanks with every shot, but the sisters simply ran toward it while chanting hymns and firing their bolt pistols. "Saint Celestine, guide our aim," Miriam shouted as she activated her jump pack. "For the Emperor's glory." The sisters launched themselves at the bio-titan's head, their power armor gleaming with sacred oils. the creature's defensive organisms, living weapons that should have shredded any attacker, seemed to falter as they came into contact with the Battle Sisters' faith. Literally. Velkoth watched through orbital reconnaissance as Tyranid bioforms simply withered and died when touched by the Sisters' blessed weapons. "They are making the enemy biology malfunction through prayer," he reported, his voice hollow with disbelief. Below them, Imperial Guard regiments had established firing lines in the most impossible positions, on top of biostructures, inside. Tyranid tunnel complexes, even hanging from the bellies of flying creatures they had somehow lassoed and claimed as mobile gun platforms. The sight of guardsmen riding Tyranid flyers while firing lasguns and shouting, "For the Emperor," challenged every assumption about vertebrate intelligence. "Colonel Kasrakin," Captain Aurelius voxed to the guard commander, "what is your status?" "We have claimed the primary hive node, my lord," came the reply over sounds of explosions and screaming. "The men are currently using frag grenades to clear out the spawning pools. Estimated full purification in 23 minutes. Outstanding. Continue the assault. The Emperors will be done." Velkoth could not comprehend what he was witnessing. A colonel of the Imperial Guard had just reported that his ordinary human soldiers had captured a Tyranid breeding complex, something that should have required orbital bombardment to eliminate, and they had done it with small arms and explosives while singing battle hymns. But the true revelation came when the Tyranid hive mind attempted its ultimate gambit. The remaining bioships began a suicide run toward the planet's surface, intending to impact with enough force to crack the crust and consume the molten core. It was a desperate but logical strategy. If the hive fleet could not harvest the world's biomass, they would at least deny it to their enemies and gain mineral resources for the next assault. "All ships," Captain Aurelius commanded, "prepare for final engagement. We will stop them before they reach the surface." "Captain," Velkoth transmitted urgently, "their combined mass is too great. Even our full fleet cannot destroy that many vessels before at least half reach impact velocity." "Admiral," came the reply, and Velkoth could hear the smile in the human's voice, "you still do not understand. We are not trying to destroy them. We are going to board them. All of them." What happened next would haunt Velkoth's dreams for centuries. Every single human vessel, from the smallest Imperial Guard transport to the mightiest battle barge, accelerated directly toward the falling Tyranid ships, not to ram them, but to match their velocity and board them during their death plunge toward the planet. "This is Captain Thorn of the 7th Cadian," came one Vox transmission as his dropship smashed into a bio-vessel's flank. "We are inside, beginning interior demolition. If anyone finds the brain bug before us, save some for the Cadian shock troops." "Sister Agatha here," came another transmission. "Our assault craft has breached the belly of bioship designation 77. We are advancing to the spawning chambers. The God Emperor's mercy is upon us." "Tech Adept Corvus reporting. The machine spirits guide us true. We have reached the neural cluster of target designation Omega, beginning sacred rites of mechanical purification. Praise the Omnissiah." Velkoth watched his displays in stunned silence as human boarding parties infiltrated every single falling bioship simultaneously. They were not conducting careful sabotage operations. They were performing full-scale ground assaults inside vessels that were plummeting toward planetary impact at terminal velocity. "Farseer," he whispered, "are they insane?" "No," Iana replied, her voice filled with something approaching awe. "They are human. This is what they do. This is what they have always done. We called them primitive, but we failed to understand they are not bound by our limitations because they never accepted that those limitations existed." The first bioship exploded in midair, its neural cluster severed by Imperial Guard explosives, then the second, then the third. One by one, the falling vessels erupted in brilliant fireballs as human boarding parties completed their impossible missions. "Bioship Tertius Prime eliminated," came a jubilant report. "This is Sergeant Voss, Katishan jungle fighters. We found the brain beast's weak spot and introduced it to some Katishan hospitality." "Outstanding work, Sergeant," Captain Aurelius replied calmly. "Canonus, what is your status?" "Bioship Septimus destroyed, Brother Captain. The Sisters send their regards to the Emperor's enemies, beginning extraction procedures." "Negative, Canoness. All units prepare for immediate reboarding operations. We have more bioships incoming from the Systems edge. Velkoth's sensors confirmed it. A second hive fleet had translated into normal space, twice the size of the first. The humans had just accomplished the impossible, and now they were preparing to do it again. "Captain," he transmitted desperately, "surely this is beyond even human endurance. Your forces must be depleted. You have taken massive casualties." "Admiral," came the reply, and now Velkoth could hear not just confidence, but genuine joy in the human's voice. "We have taken 0 casualties. The Emperor protects, and now we have target-rich environment. Brothers, sisters, guardsmen, prepare for glorious battle." The second engagement was not a battle, it was a demonstration. Human forces, having learned the bioship's weaknesses in their first assault, attacked the new hive fleet with the systematic efficiency of apex predators. Space Marine boarding pods punched through chitinous hulls like hot knives through flesh. Sisters of Battle sang hymns that somehow disrupted Tyranid synaptic networks. Imperial Guard regiments established beachheads inside bioships and began converting them into forward operating bases. "This is impossible," Velkoth whispered as his sensors tracked the complete destruction of a 1,000-ship hive fleet in less than 2 hours. "No," Farseer Ayana replied, her voice filled with reluctant admiration. "This is humanity. We called them a young species, but we were wrong. They are not young. They are perfect. Perfect predators, perfect warriors, perfect believers. They have spent 10,000 years in a galaxy that should have destroyed them 100 times over, and they have not just survived, they have thrived." The final transmission came from the planetary surface as Imperial forces completed their cleansing operations. "All enemy organisms eliminated," reported Colonel Kazakin. "The world is clean. The Emperor's will has been done." "Outstanding," Captain Aurelius replied. "Begin fortification protocols. There will be more." "Understood, my lord. The men are already requesting permission to name the primary city New Cadia in honor of their homeworld." "Granted, Colonel. And tell the men, the Emperor is pleased with their service." As the Imperial fleets prepared to depart for their next crusade, Admiral Velkoth found himself transmitting a final message to Captain Aurelius. "Human," he began, then paused, searching for words. "Your species defies all logic, all tactical doctrine, all natural law. How do you explain your continued existence?" The reply came immediately, filled with warmth and absolute certainty. "Admiral, we exist because the God Emperor of mankind wills it. We triumph because failure is not an option. We endure because this galaxy belongs to humanity, and we are simply taking back what was always ours. The Emperor protects, Xenos friend. He always has." The Vox channel closed, leaving Velkoth alone with his thoughts as the human vessels disappeared into the warp. Around him, the other council species began transmitting their own conclusions. "Recommendation," came the formal report from Craftworld Sime Han. "Never engage humanity as enemies. Their tactical doctrine appears to be impossible things accomplished through faith and fury. Counter-strategy, unknown." "Concurred," transmitted the Kroot commander. "These humans fight like the apex predators of a death world. Because they are apex predators of a death world. Do not hunt what cannot be killed." Velkoth compiled his own report as his fleet began the journey home. "Humanity represents the ultimate expression of warfare as religious experience. They do not fight to win. They fight because fighting is winning. They do not fear death because they have already died for their emperor and continue serving him afterward. Recommendation, full alliance. Alternative, species extinction." The report was filed under critical threat assessment. Humanity do not engage as hostiles under any circumstances. In the depths of space, Captain Aurelius reviewed casualty reports with Canoness Superior Celestine. 0 deaths, minimal injuries, complete tactical success. "Sister," he commented, "the Xenos fought well for their experience level." "Indeed, brother Captain. Perhaps we might request joint training exercises in the future. They could learn much from Imperial doctrine." "Agreed." "After all," Aurelius smiled within his helm, "the Emperor's light should shine upon all those willing to serve the Imperium's cause." Behind them, the cleansed world of Primaris Tertius began its new life as an Imperial colony, its citizens secure in the knowledge that humanity's protection extended even to the furthest stars. The galaxy was vast, filled with countless threats and impossible challenges. Humanity called that Tuesday.
Angels fall.